Hey guys, how are you? Happy live. I'm just gonna wait a couple minutes or seconds for whoever that wants to join, and then we'll get to answering questions. I had quite a few pre-submitted questions, quite a few too. And I know I accidentally said last live of 2020, as some people love to point out. There's two types of people in the world, There's people that are just encouraging and when you make a mistake, they just don't call you out on it. And then there's people that always make sure to call you out on every single mistake that you could possibly make on the internet. So that's always great. But, I encourage people to be as positive as possible and remember that people on Instagram are still people. Okay, Emma says, what's the most important thing to aid my immune system? I have Hashis. Not really worrying about your immune system when you have Hashis as much as understanding the root cause and fixing those issues. Immunity is going to be driven by proper metabolic function and thyroid function. And understanding that Hashis has so much more to do with inflammation of the thyroid than an immune response. So understanding that excess estrogen is going to inflame the thyroid, heavy metals, dioxins, environmental toxins, that kind of thing. Those are all going to really inflame the thyroid. And then remember, polyunsaturated fats are your worst enemy when it comes to thyroid function. So, and then overall, of course, supporting healthy digestion and healthy detoxification is really important. But, the fundamental of a healthy immune system is having the fuel to run your very cells. So, protein, carb, and fat from the right sources is very important. And that's the foundation to any thyroid condition, including Hashimoto's. Getting to the root cause of gut issues is effective because a lot of times we have an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine because our thyroid is affecting our transit time. So what happens when we have, a lot of people think gut issues are the root cause of things, and there's a root cause to gut issues, right? If food is moving very slowly through the digestive tract, something we call it transit time being slow, what happens is more rotting and fermenting occurs. And so what makes up the bulk of your diet is really important when you have metabolic conditions, because if you're eating a ton of fibrous foods that feed bacteria and that food is moving really slowly through your digestive tract, you're going to support an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. And remember, the small intestine is supposed to be as sterile as it could possibly be. And a lot of people don't have that anymore. They have allowed an overgrowth of bacteria into their digestive tract by yo-yo dieting and under eating and over exercising and being under tons and tons of stress all the time. And so their digestive systems are impaired, and then bacteria and fungus is in a place where it doesn't belong, and it's affecting your absorption of food. There's lots of endotoxins being produced because of it. It's affecting your detoxification of estrogen. It's affecting your detoxification of all hormones, and that's going to affect your body as a whole. So really understanding the types of foods that you're eating are very important. You don't want to be eating a lot of gut inflammatory foods that are just sitting there and rotting and slowing down digestion. And that's going to be huge in supporting the immune system. I think nutrient-dense foods are essential. Eating fresh liver at least once a week. Taking desiccated liver is also really powerful. Supporting detoxification, I really like my chlorophyll detox lemonade, which is a splash of organic cranberry concentrate, about a tablespoon or two of organic chlorophyll, and the juice of half a lemon, and drink that daily. That's so helpful. Eating a raw carrot every day, because those carrot fibers are really going to bind to estrogen in the gut and kind of act like a scrub brush for the gut. And then avoiding excessive consumption of starches, especially in the form of grains and beans and nuts and seeds, is so effective. And I know I always come back to nutrient-dense foods, but that is the root cause of all issues. When women are not eating enough, they're not eating the right things, that is going to be fundamentally what's important when you are trying to heal anything. I don't do any weird whack-ass protocols until we actually fix the fundamentals, which is the fuel that you eat multiple times a day, what goes inside your mouth, is going to affect you more than anything else. And then the second thing is going to be water. So if your water is not filtered and you have a thyroid issue, that is the ultimate priority, the ultimate goal, because fluoride and chlorine are both halides as well as iodine. And remember, your thyroid needs a high amount of iodine to function properly, but chlorine and fluoride will displace iodine, and that will affect how the thyroid functions. Any supplements that could help lower TSH? No. I mean, there are maybe some, but that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, how often are you eating? How much are you eating? And are you eating enough carbohydrates and enough protein? Because thyroid stimulating hormone is in fact a stress hormone. It is a stress response. The brain is sending a signal of stress. And if we want to get our TSH lower, we need to make sure we're lowering our stress. And the number one way to do that is by eating enough, eating frequently enough, and eating adequate levels of sugar and carbs or in protein. It's so important. Like, people just don't understand that when we are not eating enough and our body's constantly having to stabilize our blood sugar, that is a constant fight or flight response, because cortisol and adrenaline are needed to create us fuel. And so if we are constantly not fueling our body, we're constantly causing that secretion of cortisol and adrenaline, and we're constantly suppressing thyroid function. And normally when people have elevated TSH, they have some hypothyroidism going on. So have you gotten your free T3 rechecked, your reverse T3 checked? Do you take your temperatures and pulses? Those are all really important concepts to utilize. I did get a question that was, can you tell us if a prenatal is safe regardless of if you're pregnant or not? I'm not a big fan of prenatals. You guys know that. I don't like a lot of the forms of vitamins that are in prenatals. A lot of them still have folic acid, which is a synthetic form of folate. It's pretty hard for the liver to break down into the proper form. It requires a lot of enzymes. And on top of it, when we put folic acid into our digestive tract, that is going to feed certain bacteria and cause a lot more stress than folate does, the natural form. And then, a lot of prenatals have excessive amounts of iron, and so we're unintentionally poisoning ourselves with iron. So I'm not a big fan of prenatals, just because it's very difficult to find a comprehensive vitamin that's going to be everything that we need. This is why I love grass-fed beef liver. I think that grass-fed beef liver and oysters are probably the best multivitamin that we could possibly get from nature. But that's kind of my opinion, so don't come for me. It's just more of that's where I stand. If I can get something from a nutrient-dense source over a synthetic form, a pill capsule that I don't even know if my body's digesting or absorbing it, I'm gonna choose the former. And then somebody asked about, I think it was Amanda, she asked about a hysteroscopy and a laparoscopy, which is pretty much just they're going in with a scope into the reproductive organs. If I had any recommendations or anything about the procedure, honestly, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not like super into those procedures. I don't really know a lot about them or know enough about them to speak on them. So I usually just recommend asking your doctor that question, like, is there anything that I should know about this? Is there anything that you would tell patients? But yeah, I don't know enough about those procedures. I know a lot of women with PCOS or infertility get them done. I haven't seen really much good come from them necessarily, except for finding out that there's no fibrosis in the follicular, the tubes or in the ovaries. There's no, scar tissue or anything like that. But overall, I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but I know there have been a few of my clients who have gotten those procedures done and have found like their fallopian tubes were blocked, so that is something that is helpful. Tips, suggestions for recovering from a vacation and eating lower quality food, way higher use of PUFAs than I've had in like 4 to 5 months, etc. Just don't stress about it. Just go back to eating normal. The only thing is, like, when you do go a little overboard, just having like vitamin E and having activated charcoal as necessary is good. But overall, like, I wouldn't really stress about it. If you're feeling a little off, usually that will subside at like 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes I'll go a little heavier on like the gelatin. I'll make like some gummies with like coconut water and orange juice and gelatin and kind of just snack on those throughout the day to kind of just do some gut healing. And extra glycine is always great for the liver. Doing extra bone broth, just getting extra sleep, and just getting back into my normal routine. That's really, the recommendation. I think it's nothing, you have to worry about. Vacations are good for the soul, and sometimes that is paired with not so great food, and you're gonna live, So I would just go back to a normal routine and give it like a week or two. What would be your starting point to find my root cause for Hashis? Always nutrition. The root cause is almost always nutrition, whether that's the type of foods that you're eating or the consistency. And so, when it's finding the root cause, people get so obsessed with finding the root cause, when in reality, you just need to, who cares what the root cause is, just start with the foundations. Everybody, no matter what issue or condition they have, needs to eat well and eat enough. You can't try to rebuild anything if you don't have the proper building materials. It makes no sense. You're like, oh my gosh, I want to build a house. And then you're like, oh my gosh, where should I even start? And I'm like, you got to start with just going to the store and buying some freaking wood, So that is the first thing that we need to do. That is a foundational, regardless of what direction we go in. Everyone's like, I want to go to my functional medicine doctor and she's going to have me do this, or he's going to have me do this. And I'm like, whatever you want to do, But overall, you gotta make sure you're eating and you're eating well, and you're eating those foods that are building blocks, they're foundational. Calcium rich foods, magnesium rich foods, sodium and potassium, making sure you're getting plenty of those, making sure you're getting adequate carbohydrates from the right sources or sugars, adequate protein from bioavailable animal products, and then avoiding excessive amounts of fermentable fibers. And then, a lot of times I would say 8 out of 10, that usually takes care of most people's issues. And then you start to kind of dial it in. And so you focus in on digestion, you focus in on detoxification, you focus in on minerals. And those are kind of my foundational things. It's going to be nutrition and vitamins. So a lot of vitamins are going to come from your food. So I always say nutrition, so the macronutrients and vitamins coming from food, minerals, which are going to come from mostly from food or food substances, food sources, but sometimes need to come from supplementation on top of your nutrition, but nutrition is always foundational. And then we've got gut health and we've got detoxification kind of paired together. But remember that gut health and detoxification is going to be affected by nutrition and minerals. So, if you're trying to heal this without getting this dialed in, you're going to have some problems. And sometimes you got to do them simultaneously, but usually the foundational thing is always nutrition and minerals, and that's final. There's also, making sure that you have the foundational practices down. Sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night. Making sure that you're blocking blue light, within a couple hours before going to bed. Making sure you're getting some type of exercise in if you can handle it, if you have enough energy to do so. Strength training is awesome. I'm not talking about running or cardio or those types of stressful exercise, building muscle. And then making sure you're getting adequate amounts of red light, because if you're trying to balance your hormones and lower inflammation and you're not getting red light, whether it's from the sun or some type of red light device, you're going to have a really hard time healing. And then making sure that you are adequately working on de-stressing with, breath work or going out in nature, making sure that every single day you have some time to just relax and not be on and not be going and busy. Or you're not going to realize it, but you're going to get so stuck in that fight or flight state that when you do have some time to relax on the weekends, you're either exhausted or you're having a hard time getting out of that survival state, and you're like, I need to be productive, I need to constantly be doing something. And that is a sign of being just in an adrenaline cortisol state for a long time. So that was a long way of saying foundations first: nutrition, minerals, sleep, proper exercise, rest and de-stress, and sunlight. And then gut and detoxification. Once you've worked on that stuff and you're not seeing any results, then that's when you would add in some extra things. With PCOS and all the hormones in food, how do we exactly know what to eat? Do certain blood tests tell us what nutrients and vitamins to take? With PCOS and all the hormones in food, how do we exactly know what to eat? I think you kind of have to figure out what works for you. I go by a very pro-metabolic biochemistry, biology supporting diet. I don't get stuck in fads, keto, paleo, whatever is out there, vegan, vegetarian, people that are saying, eat this for PCOS, eat this for PCOS. No, you eat for you don't eat for your freaking disease. So I really would recommend most of the time just avoiding information on the internet and learning about your body. I really like the book How to Heal Your Metabolism by Kate Deering. It's foundational for especially my PCOS clients, but really every woman should read that book. And that's kind of like the principles in that book are what my online program Fully Nourished is based on. So Fully Nourished, walks you through all those things and has a recipe book and all of that. But that's why I created Fully Nourished. I get this question all the time, what do I eat? And I really want you guys to understand why you should eat what, I tell you, because your body needs it, and understanding the reason why you're doing what you're doing and not just like, do this, do this, do this. And I don't do a lot of fear-based nutrition. There's a lot of people saying like, don't eat this because of this and don't eat this because of this. And it's like, that's so frightening. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. And, I am someone who bought into all that for a really long time, and I did a lot of damage on myself. So I want to save other people from the pain. And then I don't think that people should take a lot of supplements unless they're specifically targeted at the person. I think we should get most of our nutrients from food. But I do use a hair tissue mineral analysis on clients. If they have mineral imbalances or really slow metabolisms, it is helpful to see what their intracellular minerals look like. And that's where a hair tissue mineral analysis comes in. Hi, my question is, my periods became pretty regular the last 3 months, 29 to 31 days. My acne while ovulation got really bad. What can be the cause? What did you add in? That would be my question. Something got added in. It sounds kind of, there's some estrogen type deals. So did you add in like a phytoestrogen, like maybe seed cycling, lots of like flax seeds or something like that? Did you tie in like a supplement that's herbal that could be proestrogenic? There's a lot of people that relate, like they say, oh, something so-and-so got better, and so therefore I think that thing was good. But a lot of people don't realize, for example, I'll use seed cycling as an example. Seed cycling is you're intaking excessive phytoestrogens, plant estrogens, right? And people are like, oh my gosh, it regulated my cycle. And I'm like, yeah, because you increased your estrogen levels so much. You're almost like relying upon like an estrogen, little tiny estrogen supplement every single day. So, just because that looks maybe good, like it regulated your cycle, it didn't necessarily do good. And that goes the same for whatever, but I'm just assuming that you implemented something new. Maybe your hormones shifted for whatever reason. Maybe it's the seasons, maybe it could be anything. And if any type of symptoms get bad around ovulation, we always want to support detoxification, because remember that estrogen rises the day before we ovulate, and then once we ovulate, progesterone should shoot up and kind of overpower that estrogen. So we should have a set period of time where we're estrogen dominant, which usually lasts less than 24 hours, or it should, but a lot of us stay estrogen dominant long term because we're not detoxifying it well, or we're not making enough progesterone. So overall, a long way of saying support detoxification the days leading up to ovulation. Raw carrot salad every day, or raw carrot every day, really helps. Would you recommend glandular supplements like desiccated thyroid for your thyroid, bovine ovaries for your ovaries, etc.? I've seen some people do some damage with like adrenals and things like that, but thyroid tends to help with most people. Sometimes it just doesn't do enough, but some people do see a lot of benefit from it. I just don't think it's like the end all be all. I think it can be a really helpful band-aid. It's not going to fix anything. And there are certain parts of the body that are maybe a little bit more concentrated in certain hormones. But again, that's kind of, I go back and forth, because the healthy gland of a healthy animal sometimes does support our own glands, because there's a lot of nutrients concentrated in those glands that are own organs need. And so that's where I think most of the benefit comes from, like when we, for example, take a concentrated source of liver, that liver is going to be rich in copper, zinc, iron. It can even be rich in vitamin C and vitamin A if it's fresh. And those are all nutrients that our liver needs in high amounts, right? And so that would make sense that it would support the liver. And it would go for any of the other organs. Just some of them can be a little bit too stimulating and the body's not quite ready for that yet. And in that case, then sometimes they can do a little bit more damage than good. Hi, Jess. I wake up nauseous. I read that it can be blood sugar issues. What can I do? Are you eating a bedtime snack that has some protein and some carb that's balanced? That could be something to think about. Usually it is a little blood sugar related or it's digestion related. So whether that's like the gallbladder is giving you some trouble, usually drinking like some warm lemon water with a little salt, a little honey can be helpful in the morning. Trying to think, maybe bone broth before bed, just kind of trying to pinpoint what it is. So first you would focus on things that support blood sugar before you go to bed, like having a little small snack that's pretty balanced, and see if that helps. If that doesn't help, then focusing on things that could be like a very liver supportive or digestive supportive and kind of experimenting with that. But yeah, I would say it's usually has to do with digestion or liver, gallbladder, or just an imbalanced blood sugar. The liver is not lasting long enough or supplying your body with sugar long enough or able to supply your body with sugar long enough throughout the night. Certain blood tests to ask my doctor for PCOS. Yeah, I mean, like you can get blood tests for PCOS. I find that a lot of times they're not that helpful. It's really what you do with them. But usually common ones are going to be like, I really like a full thyroid panel. I think that's very important. I think getting your estradiol checked is really important. Getting your progesterone levels checked is the most important. And that should be done 5 to 7 days after you ovulate. So around day... And I would say like around day 21, depending on how long your cycle is. And then obviously getting your cortisol or adrenaline checked, like getting your stress hormones checked. Prolactin can be helpful. Your LH to FSH ratio. Trying to think of what else. Like full thyroid panel, like your TSH. Trying to think of what else. Parathyroid hormone could be helpful to see like what levels of calcium are in the blood. But overall, I focus on sex hormones and thyroid, and then stress hormones. Hey Jess, thanks so much for all your info and help. You've been to me on my gut and hormone healing. I'll miss your lives over the Christmas break. Oh, I appreciate it, Gina. Gina's done so much work on her health. What do you think about HIIT workouts? I know you suggest the best workouts is weightlifting and lifting heavy, but interested in what you think about HIIT. Thanks. A lot of times long term, HIIT ends up working against women by slowing down their metabolism. So they have to restrict over time. They have to end up restricting their calories more and more and more to keep their weight down, or they're running off of stress hormones, and so they'll find themselves hitting burnout a lot. So I'm not a big fan of HIIT. If you truly want the best bang for your buck, working on building muscle is going to be your best bet long term. It's going to keep you from injury, but it's also going to keep your body really, really toned, even if you go through times where you're not able to work out as much. It's going to keep you metabolically stable, and it's going to actually work for you. Whereas HIIT is just cardio. And so cardio usually requires a stress response, and so you'll find your thyroid suppressed for usually an hour or two or sometimes more after a workout, and you end up having to really rely on the workouts, meaning that you might see a lot of progress and weight loss and toning up while you're doing that, but if you ever stop, you're going to gain weight very rapidly and quickly, because what's happening is you're keeping your body fat lower using stress, which lowers CO2 levels and just lowers metabolic function in general. Whereas I encourage women to have a robust metabolism, meaning that they can stay at a lean weight and a really healthy place naturally without having to rely upon excessive working out. And I know that's really hard for us to understand in our social construct, because a lot of people are pushing excessive exercise these days and flaunting their tight toned bodies on Instagram. But what you have to recognize is you're just seeing one sliver of that person's life. You do not know if that person struggles with anxiety or depression, painful periods, if that girl even has a period, because most of them do not. I will be honest with you, most women that you're comparing your body to do not have a period. They're not ovulating, they don't have progesterone, they're struggling with infertility, and they're seeing lots of hair loss and things like that. So usually high intensity interval training that's just like a full on, 50 or 60 minute high intensity interval training session usually ends up destroying the metabolism long term if you're doing that pretty regularly. Now, a little HIIT thrown into a workout is not a problem. Like, you're doing really heavy squats and then you throw in like 10 or 15 jump squats. That's fine. But if you're doing like a boot camp style training every day, good luck. It's not a sustainable way to stay lean if you want to stay lean long term. Also, what's the best type of daily vitamins for a woman in her 30s to take? The best daily vitamins are going to be eating a nutrient dense diet. So if you hit all of your needs, no vitamin is going to take the place of nutrient dense foods. It just can't, and it won't. And a lot of times vitamins can end up working against us unless we're making sure that it's exactly what our body's needs are. I do like a grass-fed liver supplement though. I think it kind of helps cover the bases if you're not getting, everything that you need in a day, like at least you're taking that. So that's usually my recommendation for most women is a grass-fed liver supplement. And then if you can get liver in like once a week, whether you, blend it into your meat or you do like a meatloaf or meatballs or something like that, or you like literally freeze it and just swallow it raw, whatever you can do to get it in, it can be really, really helpful. If you have a higher TSH but all your other thyroid tests are optimal, would that signal a problem somewhere else, like the pituitary, adrenals? What could it be? IDK, what to test? TSH is 4, and definitely feel like crap. Well, I mean, okay, so if you got free T3 and reverse T3 test, which is important, I would also, not underestimate excessive estrogen, low progesterone, high cortisol, high adrenaline. There's something that you're missing that you might not be able to find that is causing stress. So are you taking vitamin D? That could be a problem. Remember, if you're taking vitamin D or hormone D, it's really a hormone. You're stimulating the pituitary to pump out ACTH in a lot of cases. ACTH is a stress hormone, and it usually stimulates the adrenals to make cortisol and adrenaline. And so that can be a potential factor. High prolactin could be a potential factor. I'm trying to think. Excessive estrogen could be a factor. Low progesterone could be a factor. And then just elevated stress in general could be a factor. So usually TSH is not high on its own, but it can be. And usually it requires somebody still acting as if they had a thyroid issue and focusing on thyroid imbalance. But yeah, it is technically, thyroid stimulating hormone is technically secreted by the pituitary gland and not even the thyroid. So yes, it is usually a stress response or a response to stress. The brain's registering stress in some environmental way. Just got off my hormonal IUD today. Would desiccated liver pills help get the hormones out of me? Anything else I should do? Well, that's really exciting, Katie. So I think it's when you get off the IUD, it's just one of those things where usually you just kind of have to wait it out, like I just got to wait to see what my body does. Sometimes you go back to ovulating right away if you don't know if you are already ovulating or not. But yeah, I mean, a good liver support, like a good B vitamin support with desiccated liver is always good. I always recommend like whole foods vitamin C, making sure you're either getting plenty or maybe even considering taking some. Vitamin E is always so powerful and helpful at blocking estrogen and any like oxidative stress. But overall, just a nutrient dense diet, eating a raw carrot every day, balancing your blood sugar. Those are always the best ways to support the body, and just getting enough protein is so important for liver health. Remember guys, 90 grams a day at least, usually 90 to 100 is optimal for proper liver detoxification and blocking estrogen accumulation, because low protein diets or low animal protein diets, you'll see this in a lot of the people that you follow that are vegan or vegetarian, They end up like starting to come down with like PMS, really bad PMS, really bad painful heavy periods, maybe like premenstrual migraines, estrogen type symptoms. And it's because they're not getting enough bioavailable protein. They could do all the whatever brown rice protein they wanted to, but that's not going to support their liver. So a good amount of animal protein is going to be your best friend in regards to detoxification, supporting the movement of estrogen, and all that good stuff. Also, thank you for being so helpful. You rock, girl. Of course. Yeah, Lavinia, I'm not really sure why your TSH is high, but I would consider stress. Whether it could be totally environmental, but usually I always like boil it down to first nutritional stress, like try to rule out any of that and then go from there. What to do when the stomach isn't digesting properly, as in food feels like it just sits there for days and getting bloated stomach issues. Well, first of all, like, examine your stress. Remember, digestion actually starts in the nervous system. It doesn't start in the mouth. Like, a lot of people say, like, digestion starts in the mouth. And I'm like, yeah, it does technically once food hits the mouth. But actually, digestion starts with our senses. So our sight, our smell, our taste, even hearing food, like, cooking is important. And so a lot of us don't realize that, and we don't actually allow ourselves to experience our food. A lot of times we'll scarf it down at our desk. We're in a really stressed out state. We're mad, we're sad, we're emotional, we're watching TV, we're looking at our phone while we're eating, and we're not actually letting our nervous system calm down at all, or we're driving while we eat, and that's going to affect digestion more than anything else. And so first is evaluate your stress levels. Are you really tense and tight in your belly? Are you just clenched and like tight all around? That's going to affect your digestion. So first of all, take 10 deep breaths before you even touch your food, and then look at it, smell it, and then allow yourself to chew it and taste it. Actually savor the food. And a lot of times that alone is enough to help with digestion. But then if not, digestive enzymes are where it's at. Getting digestive enzymes going, and that's going to be really helpful. And then also evaluating like how much fibrous vegetables are you eating? Are you eating tons of raw greens? Do you look forward to your food? Are you eating things that you actually truly enjoy and are really craving and salivating over? Or are you kind of like, here, I'm eating my rabbit salad again, you know? Like if you actually go and like watch a bunch of people eat salads, like we look like we're trying to pretend to be cows, man. Like we are not meant to eat that food. And so we got to make sure we're eating foods that we look forward to, that we enjoy, that we salivate over, and that that truly satisfy our cravings. And then, you know, just evaluating what we're eating as well. But yeah, digestive enzymes can be really, really helpful if food just kind of sits there. Any thoughts on methylene blue? You know, obviously it's really popular in the Ray P community. I'm like not brave enough to try it just because it's not like made for internal like use. So, but yeah, a lot of people love it. They think it's like awesome. They utilize it. I'm just too afraid, but maybe one day I will look into utilizing it and trying it out. What blood test would you recommend for hair loss? A full thyroid panel and high cortisol, prolactin, PTH, vitamin D. Let's see. ACTH can also be helpful, and then like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Sex hormone binding globulin can be helpful to kind of see if your testosterone is being bound to or not, but in reality, you know, hair loss is going to be driven by internal biological stress. Because our hair follicles have a high need for nutrients. And so I would suspect if you're experiencing hair loss and you have high TSH, there's a stress issue. You're probably not eating enough. Maybe you're not eating frequently enough. You're not keeping your blood sugar balanced. Maybe you're not sleeping enough. But I would suspect it's probably a not eating enough problem. And usually women need to be around 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. If they're more active, that needs to be reevaluated. Sometimes it needs to be more. So, but I really like the book Hair Like a Fox by Danny Roddy, if you haven't read that already. Is vitamin A a common deficiency? I would like to get a blood test for it because my theory is that I have it low. Yeah, it is common, a deficiency, because a lot of people are not eating bioavailable sources of it. And beta carotene, so like anything that's orange in color is beta carotene, but beta carotene has to be converted into vitamin A or retinol. And that requires thyroid hormone. And so a lot of people have a low metabolism or high stress, and they're not converting beta carotene into vitamin A, and they're having a vitamin A deficiency. And remember, vitamin A is actually needed in that conversion of cholesterol into all of your hormones, cortisol, progesterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, estrogen, testosterone. And so a lot of times if we have a vitamin A deficiency, we're having a hard time converting our cholesterol into the downstream hormones. Had CT of abdomen in May, and again 2 weeks ago, and I still have 3 tiny kidney stones. How do I get these out? Also, appendix has shrunk to normal. Could this be from a better diet? Probably. Your appendix is kind of like a bag of bugs, so it has a lot to do with the digestive tract, so that's awesome. When it comes to kidney stones, it's one of those things where a lot of times it has to do with calcification. I'm wondering if like magnesium would help, but honestly I'm not sure about kidney stones. Some people like to do like a phosphoric acid, like drinking Coke, I like real cane sugar Coke, like a Mexican Coke, but some people find that that's helpful for them, but I don't really have any tricks for kidney stones. It's more about just kind of figuring out what could possibly be causing calcification and working on balancing out that calcium. Sometimes it could be a vitamin K issue. Remember that vitamin K is necessary to allow calcium to get where it needs to go, which is the bones and the teeth. And so if we're deficient in vitamin K, we will have a difficult time getting calcium into the bones and the teeth. And a lot of times it can cause calcification all around, calcification of the tonsils and calcification, gallstones and sometimes kidney stones as well. What are some important deficiencies everybody should test for, like blood tests? The hair analysis you talk about doesn't exist in my country. It's blood tests are really hard when it comes to like deficiencies, because I wonder what country you're in, because there are a lot of countries that do hair tissue mineral analysis. You just kind of have to look for it. I highly recommend going to the root cause protocol. Morley Robbins has a directory of where you can get your hair tissue mineral analysis in your country. But when it comes to blood test, you can get like fat soluble vitamins tested, like vitamin A. You can do like RBC magnesium, which can help test magnesium levels. But a lot of times when you blood test for like, for example, minerals, it's not as accurate, because a lot of times your body will keep minerals pretty balanced in the bloodstream and will pull from the cells to do so. And so sometimes it's not as accurate, but testing like B12 and B6 can usually be tested. You can test iodine, like you can test certain things, and you can always ask your doctor like what you can test for. Natural help for cramps in the lower back. If your cramps are happening pretty often or around your period, a lot of times that actually has to do with excessive prostaglandins. That has to do with excessive, things happening in the gut, actually. One of my clients has really bad cramps in her lower back or pain, and chlorophyll really helps, and activated charcoal really helps. But magnesium can sometimes be helpful for cramps, like just actual muscle cramps. I really like applying like a topical magnesium oil or gel to my muscle cramps. Hi Jess, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Cecilia. When taking temps, do we get our baseline first thing in the AM without moving from bed? Best way to take temps and pulses. Yeah, I'm actually going to work on, so during the break, I'm going to announce a little Instagram hiatus. So I'll be taking a break until the beginning of January, but I'm going to be doing a video on temps and pulses while I'm off. So even though I'm off from Instagram, I'm going to be working on a lot of content. I got my pot is stirring, and I just want to really focus on bringing the content in 2020. So one of the things I'm going to be working on is a temps and pulse video for YouTube. So I'll be walking you through that really in depth. But yes, the best way is to get your baseline right when you wake up. So you want your baseline temperature to be around 97.6 or even above would be better, right? You just don't want it dropping below that. And then you want it to increase over the course of the day and finally spike mid-afternoon. So usually you want your 1 to 3 p.m. temperature to be anywhere from 98.6, which is normal body temperature, to around 99. So a little higher than normal body temperature is a sign of a really high functioning metabolism. But remember that temperatures can lie. So remember, temperatures are an indicator of heat, and our body is producing heat using the fuel that we're giving it. However, if we're not giving our body enough fuel or the right fuel, our body has to create fuel, right? And the way that it will do that is increase cortisol so that you make glucose out of your muscles. And so that can be a heat creator too. So stress can create heat. So that's why I always recommend doing pulses as well, because temperatures sometimes lie and people are like, oh my gosh, my temperatures are so great. And then they take their pulses and they're like at 50 or at like 120. And whenever your pulses are low, that's an indicator that stress is really actually driving your temperature. Or when your pulses are really, really high, there's adrenaline right there driving your temperature. So it's really good to take both. But yeah, baseline is going to be right when you wake up. And for women, the best time to really pay attention to your baseline is during your period. Your period is actually the most accurate representation of where your metabolism is at, temps and pulse wise. And so a lot of women find that during their period, they have a way lower temperature than throughout the month because progesterone is in the picture that second half of the cycle. And when progesterone's in the picture, you're usually going to find your temps a little more elevated. So, usually taking your temperatures and pulses all month long is important so you kind of notice your patterns. But yeah, right when you wake up is the best time to first start taking them. And then about an hour after meals to see how your meals are affecting you. You want to make sure that your meals are increasing your temps and pulses, raising your metabolism. If you find your meals lowering your temps and pulses, that shows you that you have a lot of stress at play, right? Your stress hormones are driving your temperatures and pulses. Your stress hormones are driving, that burning, that thermogenesis. And so when you're eating, you're actually lowering your stress hormones. And that's not where we want that. We actually want our food and our fuel to be utilized as heat and fuel and energy, right? And so we want to make sure our meals are raising our temps and pulses. And that'll usually happen around 40 minutes to an hour after eating. And then of course we want to make sure our exercise is not suppressing our metabolism. And so taking our temps and pulses after exercise can also be a great way to see like, whoa, my adrenaline cortisol is through the roof right now. Or wow, my thyroid's really suppressed right now because my temperature is super low. So that's kind of the gist of it, but I'll make sure I do like a way in-depth video for you guys. A student gave me magnesium body spray with lavender for Christmas. Awesome. That's so nice. The only ingredients are magnesium chloride, aqua, and lavender oil. Thoughts? Wondering about the lavender, not an oil user. Yeah, lavender I usually tell people is just super estrogenic, so you don't want to use it super, really excessively. But I think she probably didn't put too much. She probably just used it for the scent. So I wouldn't stress about it. That's a really thoughtful gift and really nice and relaxing to use. So I would assume there's probably not too much lavender in there, but normally I recommend people being careful with lavender just because it's so estrogenic, because there's a lot of people applying it straight to their thyroid and shit, which is don't do that. Does starting seed cycling help get the period back after the hormonal IUD stopping it? I know you don't like seeds. I'm not a big fan of seed cycling. I think that a lot of people are not realizing that just because you're seeing a return of the cycle doesn't necessarily mean that what the seeds are doing is good. Seeds are pretty estrogenic, and then on top of it, they're immunosuppressive. So sometimes people think oh, something's anti-inflammatory, it must automatically be good. It's not always the case. If something is suppressing the immune system, it usually is going to drive some type of stress response. Because keep in mind, corticosteroids, right? When we take steroid medication, that is synthetic cortisol, right? Because stress hormones, even Western medicine will admit that stress hormones lower inflammation, have a very anti-inflammatory response. And so a lot of people just don't realize this. They think oh, it's anti-inflammatory, it must automatically be good. That's not the case in every situation. So I'm not a big fan of seeds. I think that they are really, really anti-nutrient. Their anti-nutrient potential binds to a lot of minerals in the gut. A lot of times they're pretty estrogenic, so they're going to drive more estrogenic symptoms. But, a lot of people will swear by seed cycling, and I'm not going to, argue with them because a lot of people, it's their deep beliefs. But I think there are way more effective ways to bring back a cycle than seed cycling. What are your thoughts on Vitex berry supplement on hormone balance, reduce estrogen dominance? You just have to make sure you don't have high luteinizing hormone. And remember that Vitex partially works by raising luteinizing hormone, which stimulates, your body to ovulate, which is going to be the thing that makes the most progesterone. So it just really depends on somebody's situation. A lot of women with PCOS have high luteinizing hormone, and so actually taking Vitex tends to make them worse, not better, but sometimes it can help. So it's one of those things where it just kind of depends. But some people see like a lot of benefit from Vitex, and I'm not against it. Like I've used it before in the past, but you just want to make sure you don't have high luteinizing hormone. My breasts are sore since stopping long-term doxycycline. This also happened when I reduced the dose a month ago too. What is going on? Interesting. Maybe it was helping with your estrogen detoxification, or maybe it it blocked some type of estrogen detoxification, because this sore breasts are almost always a sign of poor estrogen detoxification or excessive estrogen, or low progesterone, or a mixture of all three. So I'm not sure. I've never heard of that, but remember, we can think of it in this way. Doxycycline is an antibiotic, and antibiotics kill bacteria. Bacteria do affect neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and they're also going to affect estrogen detoxification in the gut, right? Because keep in mind, there's bacteria that produce a enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, which can reactivate estrogen in the digestive tract and have you actually reabsorb estrogen and reutilize it, which is the last thing you want to do, right? Because when you're detoxifying estrogen, it's going through the liver, it's being dumped into bile in the gallbladder, and then the gallbladder is secreting that bile into the small intestine to be carried through, right? We want estrogen out. We want it pooped out. We do not want our estrogen reabsorbed and reactivated in the digestive tract, which is what some bacteria have the potential to do. And so I'm wondering if you were killing bacteria that had the potential to reactivate and cause the reabsorption of estrogen. Just a theory, but something I'm throwing out there. It is possible. I have high copper and low zinc. Do you think it would be a bad idea for me to take desiccated beef liver capsules? I don't think it would be a bad idea. I think everyone really can benefit from desiccated liver capsules, and I think that's a lot better option than a lot of people would say, I should take zinc, right? And it usually causes a lot of problems. So I really like a desiccated liver supplement over supplementing individual minerals. When digestion is off. Damn, maybe I missed Flavorful Fit's question. I'm just making sure I didn't. I don't think I got your question, girl. I see your when digestion is off ... but I don't know if that was in regards to a question. Does that mean that vitamin D is bad? Vitamin D is awesome when you make it yourself. It's not super awesome when you're taking high doses of it, and it's not appropriate for you. Now, this depends very specifically on the situation and the person. Some people have really low vitamin D levels, and they do need to supplement a little bit, but some people are just excessively supplementing, not realizing that they're like calcifying their soft tissues. Thoughts on cod liver oil for my omega-3? I don't eat fish. You guys know I am not a fan of omega-3, and I don't really care for fish oils at all. You can dive into Ray Peat's articles on that if you want to do some more research, but I think fish oil is one of the biggest scams of the century, and it's making people very sick. Are the greens of root vegetables good as opposed to other greens like lettuce, spinach, etc.? I never thought about that. No, I think like lettuce, spinach, all of those greens, it's really dependent on the person. Some people can't do any because of their digestive issues. They have like too much bacteria, and what's happening is there's lots of fermentation occurring when they eat those foods, and so they need to do more of like a greens broth. But greens are super rich in magnesium. That's something that shouldn't be denied. It's just, some people can't do the actual raw leaves, and so it's just very dependent on the person. But I think like lettuce, spinach, it's very important for creating vitamin K2 in theory, because bacteria are going to break down those greens to make K2, but if you have like an overgrowth of bacteria and they're working against you, then it's one of those things where sometimes a broth works better for a magnesium source. But I never thought about the greens of root vegetables. I don't even know, like turnip greens or like, I don't know. I don't know if that's, if turnip greens and greens like that would be like beet greens are cruciferous vegetables. I would assume not, but I'm not sure. If I purchased a package to work with you, could we do that even if I live in Canada? Yeah, so I'm trying not to answer too many questions about my one-on-ones right now, because part of my little Insta hiatus is going to be me really sitting down and like outlining every detail of my one-on-ones, and I'm trying to figure out the logistics. So I don't want to give you guys yes and no's, like yes, absolutely, or no, absolutely not. I just really have to sit down and figure out like if I can logistically get HTMAs in Canada. I usually do work with people in Canada, but it just kind of depends on the situation. So I don't want to tell you, yes, we can absolutely do an HTMA, but I think we will. By the way, good evening. Enjoyed our FN Live. You're a workhorse today. Oh, yeah. You know, like, I told my assistant, Rebecca, yesterday, I was like, I think I'm going to take, like, an Instagram break until the beginning of the year. And she's like, yeah, do it. And I was like, okay. And so, like, today I've just been, like, answering emails and, like, getting everything prepared for my break. And when I say break, I just mean, like, break from being in the public eye or on Instagram. I'm still going to be, like, working like a mad dog because I am excited for the new year. Is there a specific zinc that helps acne more? Not necessarily, but I don't really think supplementing zinc is a good idea for most people unless they truly know they're low and they truly need it. I think like grass-fed beef liver or natural sources of zinc are just going to be better, like oysters, like I said, oysters and then grass-fed beef liver. And like, yeah, grass-fed beef is a really great source, or bison or things like that as well. But yeah, I prefer natural sources of zinc if possible. What's the best way to test iodine? Serum okay? Specific name? The best way to do iodine is actually a P test. So a lot of physicians will do an iodine P test. Oh gosh, I'm spacing on the name. There's a name for it, and like I should know it. I say it all the time, and I'm not remembering. But pretty much what you do is you push iodine, and then you're peeing to see how much comes out. Now, but you can totally do a serum. Just sometimes it comes back not as accurate. Like some people are still showing signs of iodine deficiency, but their serum tests are showing a little bit low. But serum can be pretty accurate. And usually it's just, hey doc, can you test my iodine? I saw a magnesium supplement today that had added B6, taurine, and zinc. What may this be about? I was so curious. Taurine is going to be effective for bile flow and detoxification in general. I mean, taurine has a million benefits, but liver and gallbladder health is going to be at the top. B6 is really important, right? Because magnesium and B6 work together in the cell to keep copper balanced, and that can really be effective in histamine issues. I'm not sure about the zinc, though. I'm not a big fan of just throwing zinc in because zinc's good. So I don't know why the zinc, but I could see the taurine and the B6, I guess. Those are weird things to mix together. B6 and magnesium are not weird to mix together. I've seen supplements like that before. But yeah, taurine and zinc, a little weird. Not sure. Can I get my iodine from kelp drops? Yeah, I mean, you can do iodine from kelp drops, or as long as you're doing seafood like once or twice a week, that's usually sufficient. But yeah, you can usually do kelp for iodine. Could balancing magnesium fix a deficiency even without a ton of sunshine? Sometimes it can. A lot of times a vitamin D deficiency is not just driven by magnesium. It goes, I've said this like a million times, I'm sorry if I'm saying it again for you, but it goes low potassium, so you lose potassium, you lose magnesium, your calcium becomes elevated, then you lose boron, then you lose rubidium, and then you lose lithium, and then your vitamin D becomes low. So a lot of times it's a loss of all those minerals before you lose vitamin D. And so usually we have to balance potassium, magnesium, got to get calcium where it needs to go in the bones and teeth, got to get lithium up, rubidium up, and boron up. And then a lot of times vitamin D will take care of itself. But sometimes it can just be the magnesium. So that just kind of depends on the person. Thoughts on sunscreen for face, avoiding hyperpigmentation due to acne? I think sunscreen is in general a really stupid idea, and mind you, this is my opinion, but sunscreen is just so toxic. Even the mineral-based sunscreens, you have to understand that these low levels of zinc or titanium or something can get into the cells. And remember, those metals are reflective, right? Reflective. And so you're literally allowing, think of like a small mirror to absorb into your skin. And now we have like reflective light going everywhere inside underneath the skin. That's really scary shiznit, you know? And especially if you have excessive amounts of polyunsaturated fats in your tissues that oxidize when exposed to light and heat and oxygen, like hello free radicals. And then, you know, estrogen on top is going to cause like excessive hyperpigmentation. So when it comes to hyperpigmentation, you've got to look into estrogen. Like, do you use birth control? How do you use birth control? Do you have adequate progesterone levels? Are you moving estrogen properly? Because estrogen is the number one driver of hyperpigmentation hyperpigmentation, honestly, especially melasma. And then we also need to consider polyunsaturated fats. If you're eating tons of plant fats that oxidize when exposed to light and heat and oxygen, of course there's hyperpigmentation involved because those fats that are literally in your tissues are oxidizing constantly. Do you use polyunsaturated fats on your face? That's another thing. If we're using oils on our face that literally are going rancid and oxidizing when exposed to the sun, hello aging. So those are kind of the three things that I look into. I think it's not a good idea to burn, so sometimes sunscreen is necessary. I always use a mineral-based sunscreen, like if I'm, going to be out in the sun a lot and I don't want to like fry, I'll use sunscreen, but I'm not a big sunscreen user because I do think it causes aging. I do think it's pretty toxic regardless of how natural it is, and I think people's obsession with being scared of the sun is kind of funny. Like, it's like we've literally coexisted with the sun for thousands of years, and all of a sudden we're like wearing like gloves when we drive so our hands don't age. Like, what the heck? I will admit, I saw Lauren on the Skinny Confidential doing that. I mean, she's a little excessive. She just like cracks me up, makes me giggle. But I saw her, she was wearing like a big rimmed hat and like gloves so that like her hands won't age, and I'm just like, girl, like, okay, like this is a little ridiculous. I just got more hormones tested. It was on day 22. Does that make sense? You say 5 to 7 days after ovulation. Yeah, usually like day 19 to 21, day 22, depending, is usually a good time. My acne clears up when I take topical antibiotics. What could be the reason? I'm trying to figure out a natural way to achieve this. Yeah, keep in mind that a lot of times antibiotics will work while you're on them or while you're using them. Why? Because iron is being detoxified from the face, and that iron is feeding bacteria. And so when you kill the bacteria temporarily, you're going to see the acne clear up temporarily. But the minute that you stop them, the iron's continuing to come out of the face, and so the bacteria will continue to eat the iron. So we got to work on our iron detoxification, and we got to work on our iron utilization, which requires vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, all of vitamins and minerals, making sure we're getting adequate amounts of protein in our diet, and we're working on our metabolic health. We're working on detoxifying estrogen. Everything that I talk about here applies to acne. Acne is a condition of poor detoxification. How do I track my basal body temperature while getting off birth control? You just start tracking it. You just start taking it. It might be a little all over the place at first. Sometimes it takes 2-3 months to balance out, but it's just good to kind of start tracking and just see where your body goes. But usually, once you get your first period, then you want to start to keep track, because you can look back and say, oh, that's when I ovulated. Because sometimes temperature spikes, like, it can take a while to kind of get the hang of it. And so it's good to just be tracking, even if you don't know anything what you're doing. Just download Kindara and like just input your temperature every day. If you want to do like cervical position and cervical mucus, that's fine. But I usually just say keep it simple and just track your temperature every single day, and then mark when you start your period. Because once you start your period, you ovulated before, and so you can look back and say, oh, here was my temp spike. That's when I ovulated. I ovulated the day before my temperature rose. So that's you just start tracking, and then you look back after like a month or so, or when you start your period, and you start to look at patterns. That's all. You don't really obsess about it until you have enough data or information to start like looking at your patterns. Can you share the formula you use for hair growth? You mentioned caffeine and aspirin, but wondering how to make. Yeah, honestly, I just take hot water, I crush up aspirin in a mortar and pestle, and then I dissolve aspirin in that hot water, and then I absorb powdered caffeine in that hot water as well. You can buy like caffeine supplements on Amazon. I just buy bulk supplements, caffeine, and will dissolve. I always get dilute and dissolve, those two words mixed up. I don't know why. Dissolve caffeine and aspirin in warm water. And then I usually will just apply it like, with one of those like squeegee bottles that has a long tip that you usually use for like hair dye. I'll use something like that. Sometimes I'll add niacinamide as well, which is vitamin B3, which further stimulates hair growth. And then, using red light therapy on top of that really, really helps. But remember, hair loss is mostly internal, so that's going to be the thing that you got to focus on. Got to lower stress, got to support the thyroid, got to get your metabolism working well, because stress is going to drive hair loss. How to help prevent acne getting worse after stopping the hormonal IUD? Unfortunately, a lot of times it won't. You can't. It will. And it's just one of those parts of coming off birth control that is just kind of a purging period. It usually takes about 6 months. But the best way is just to continue to support detoxification as much as possible. You know, taking detox baths, doing a sauna, making sure you're eating adequate protein, balancing your blood sugar, getting enough sleep, exercising or sweating, you know, just doing the basics and hoping for the best. But sometimes it kind of is like this period of just getting worse before getting better. Does baby aspirin deplete folate levels? Not to my knowledge. Aspirin usually depletes glycine, and it's gonna raise your needs for vitamin K2. So glycine is found in a lot of like gelatin and collagen type foods. How many servings of beef liver per week is safe? That just really depends on your own research. I usually say like once a week, but there are people that I know that eat it every day. Okay, Instagram's gonna cut me off in 1 minute and 40 seconds, so I'll do as many as I can, but if I get cut off, that's why. I love you guys. Is it safe to use jojoba oil on my skin as an oil cleansing and moisturizing? Most of the time, yes. It is more it's more monounsaturated and a little bit polyunsaturated, but a lot of people like it because it's like a wax-like substance, so I think that is kind of a personal decision. Is it okay to use coconut oil on skin and face as a moisturizer? Yeah, coconut oil is completely saturated. So what could cause white spots on the skin? I have some on my shins and chest, PUFA. Honestly, I'm not sure, but I would say maybe like a lipofuscin, which is like the mixture of PUFA and excessive iron. I'm wondering if that's it. I've seen people with that before, and I'm honestly not sure, but I have thought about it. Feeling super irritable. I have no time for people. Haha, it's the worst because I'm not actually an a-hole, but I feel like one. Blood sugar? Yeah, probably. Like you probably just like, I need sugar. That's like the sugar monster. But yeah, probably blood sugar. That's usually me. Like, yeah, you don't want to be exposed to the Jess monster. Thoughts on ester block and DHT block for detoxification of hormones? I don't think saw palmetto is really a good idea for anybody. I'm a teacher and we get 2 weeks off starting this Friday. I'd like this break to reset and try to get back with my nutrition. Any tips? I'll have lots of time. Yeah, just choose a few habits you want to master and just stick to a few. Like, don't be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start like a whole new protocol. Just choose a few things that are most important to you. But yeah, for the ester block and DHT block, I really like vitamin E instead. All right, guys, I love you.